try to have some interesting things going on this show. We've been talking about football, so it's been boring for the last few weeks. So what do? We go in there and talk about the Black 14. The Black 14, what is that? That is a school that I went to a while back. Go to your website, look up Wyoming Black 14, and you'll know the history. But until now, since you don't know the history, Donna Hopkins, as you know, and myself, we brought in the best to get it done. We brought in Dennis Croft, the historian and the exhibit designer for the College Hall of Fame. Welcome to the show, Dennis.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Tony and Donna. It's an absolute pleasure.
Hey, Dennis, you had to deal with Tony for a few days and everything. I know that was hard.
Well, actually, it was more like 8 or 9 months.
Oh, that's even harder.
I see that. We already busted down. And see that? Me and Dennis, we only been knowing each other 8 or 9 months, but it's like we've been knowing each other for years. And I tell you.
Well, Dennis, my hat goes off to you because you had to deal with him that long. I know you had your hands full. But as Tony said, that even though we are not in Black History Month in February anymore, the Black 14 has been around for a long time as far as on that platform, even more so what they're doing in the community. And then as far as healing hearts. And, you know, a lot of people, if they don't know the story, they can definitely get to know it a little better today. So I'm going to let Tony start it off because just last month, you all had an event and an exhibit at the College Hall of Fame down in Atlanta. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that and just your thoughts behind why this was important to have the Black 14 there in the College Hall of Fame and the display that you all had.
Now, before you get started, you can see now that I keep her in the dark. I didn't tell her all about it and everything, even though she was on one of the films when we went through there. But Dennis, I want them to know about this because they don't know what that exhibit means to me, myself, my family, and a lot of other people. And you guys put together a wonderful exhibit. And you're telling me now that this exhibit, you want to keep it for even longer because more people than you anticipated probably are coming to look at it.
Yes, the genesis for this actually happened just almost a year ago. Mo Gardner, who was a Hall of Fame defensive lineman at the University of Illinois, he was enshrined into the Hall of Fame in 2022, and he and I are just big history fans. And so he and I got to talking about the Black 14 documentary that had come out a few years ago, and we thought, wouldn't it be really great if we did a shared exhibit on the Black 14. So we reached out to Tony, we reached out to John Griffin out in Colorado. I did a lot of research. The University of Wyoming, BYU, were very helpful in providing me with a lot of primary sources. And before you knew it, it just kind of started to grow. It was more than just being a Black History Month exhibit, which was the original intent. But then it turned into an opportunity to do something wonderful for the city of Atlanta, which has become my home now over the last couple of years. So when John, Tony, and Mel Hamilton all volunteered to travel to Atlanta and to help us with a food delivery to the Atlanta Community Food Bank and to hold a panel discussion for students, both at Georgia State and Morehouse, they all came to the Auburn Avenue Library. They came the next day to the Hall of Fame. It became a wonderful weekend to celebrate this, but more importantly, to let people know that the College Football Hall of Fame is interested in telling stories from all of college football. Some of the good, some of the bad, but we had the opportunity to tell one of the most powerful and impactful stories that we think not enough people were aware of.
Before we get into it, Dennis, tell me, after seeing it, after meeting us, give me your thoughts on the whole situation, the Black 14, what happened, and you've seen that you put together a piece of history, and you seem to know our history by doing that. What did you think after you saw this, you met us? What is your thought about the whole situation?
Well, first of all, I was totally shocked at the story. Now, I'll admit, I didn't grow up in the most enlightened time. I grew up in the South in the 70s and 80s, but I grew up in Tampa. I had Doug Williams as my quarterback. So I grew up in a world where a Black quarterback was just normal. So I guess I was a little bit naive and not realizing the extent of racism throughout football, not just in the Deep South, but stretching all the way out into the Rockies where you were. And so the fact that you and your friends and teammates were treated so harshly and so unfairly, but yet have somehow turned that into a positive that has benefited tens of thousands of people, I find that to be just a remarkable story. So I am in awe of what you have done. That awe in what you have done kind of cancels out my awe that this had to have happened in the first place back in 1969. But just the charity and the humility that you, Mel, John, and all the other members of the Black 14 who I was not able to meet was just very impressive.
You know, Donna, we've given out over 1 million pounds of food, and I tell you what, I know you got a question for it, but I got one more. You said that you had this exhibit up, and you were telling me you were only going to keep it until the end of Black History Month. So you've had a nice turnout for individuals looking at it.
We have. We pride ourselves on being available to school groups throughout the year at the Hall of Fame because we're the Hall of Fame. We know that we have our target audience of a lot of hardcore college football fans, but we're also a museum and we're an educational institution. And so the opportunity to have school children come through, school groups come through, and to see this exhibit and to learn that the civil rights movement was not just something that happened in the Deep South. It also happened in the Great American West, and it involved college football. As well as Dr. King and as well as all of the other leaders of the civil rights movement in the 60s. So that part has been great. So we have expanded it. We were going to expand it for just one more month, but we're going to try and see, working with you and John, if we can keep it up until at least through June when school is completely over so that we have this opportunity to bring school groups in throughout the rest of the year. What it is we had no idea. A lot of people just did not know that this had happened back in '69, and they did not realize the amount of goodwill that then was created from it. Because that's the important thing for me in the exhibit is that I want people to focus just as much on the positives that came out of it as opposed to the negatives. Because as a society, we tend to right now dwell a lot on negative, but it's what do you do? After you get slapped in the face, how do you react? And Tony and John and Mel, they maybe not turn the other cheek completely, but they turn the other cheek just enough that they could see a way to make a positive out of it.
I like how he said, Tony, that you all turned the cheek just enough with what you went through. But Tony, some of your teammates were some of the members of the Black 14 that was there in Atlanta for this exhibit open said that when they were there, they were brought to tears. And I would like to know what was your feelings as you stood there with this exhibit and then the activities that went on in Atlanta, because I'm sure that it got pretty emotional for you also.
Yeah, it did. And Donna, let me kind of give you a breakdown of the individuals that was there, because we are the board, the board for the Black 14. But the three individuals, the first one was Mel Hamilton. He was there, Donna, prior to me. I didn't go to University of Wyoming until 1967. He was there prior to that. As he was there in a starting offensive lineman, he came from the service. He wanted to play there, and he had a young lady that he wanted to get married to. And when he went, and the athletic director said, "Okay, Mel, you can get married, and you can stay in student housing." When he went to the coach, Coach Eaton's words were, "You'll never use Wyoming money to marry that woman," and that's because she was white. And so he left. He went to the service, and he came back, and that's why I always say he was the original Black 14. Then you had John Griffin, who was one of the Black 14. I had just met him at the time, but at that time, he had just come, so he never got the opportunity to play in that game against BYU. He was one of the athletes to go back. So that's what makes this particularly a good story, because he went back, and for 20 years, I didn't speak to the brother, and I didn't know his circumstance. But one of the stories he told me was he went back because, he just wanted to finish what he started. And see, I can understand that. Then it was myself who they thought was the troublemaker in the beginning, which I probably was. And I was there. So when they honored us, it was just so great. And one of the stories was, when did you forget? When did you forgive and stop being angry? And since it was only an hour ago, that was about an hour before he asked me that question. I told him I hadn't forgot. So that's why he told me, I haven't turned it inside. But it means so much, and it's so emotional. And I can say this to you guys and to your fans out there. I had my mother with me to see that. And I can't think of any other individuals in the world in my situation that had a chance to do that. And I thank you guys for that as well, Dennis. And you guys can have it as long as you want. And I hope it means something. I want people to know that this is not just about the Black 14 and what happened. This is about forgiving. This is about working together. This is about justice served. And when you give over 1 million pounds of food to everybody, it wasn't just in Black neighborhoods, it was any neighborhood that needed. And the one thing about it, Donna, and Dennis knows this, as we gave out the food, the Latter-day Saints came with people to help us give it out, to help us take it off the truck. So this was a unity in making things happen. So when I feel about it and when I talk about it, and even when I look back now, they got a lot of stuff on YouTube and everything. I just look back and I say, man, this is something that I didn't realize to this stage of the game how important it was. And, I just, as you can see, Don, and you and I have been talking about this for 15 or 20 years, but I'm always excited about it. And they did such a great job. And I encourage you guys, encourage the people to go see it. And Dennis, before we get off, I don't know how people get in touch with the museum and anything to come and visit you guys, but if there's anything we can help to do it, because I'd like for people to see it.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. But we are a great Atlanta attraction. We're located right downtown on Marietta Street across from Centennial Park. If you're going to the aquarium, you're going to the World of Coca-Cola, you got to walk by us to get there. So stop in. If you want to plan your trip, we have a website, cfbhall.com, that you can visit and plan your trip accordingly. And we don't just focus on any one school. I know it may seem that way being in the heart of SEC country, but we're everybody's college football Hall of Fame. And as you can tell, I took some time to decorate behind me. If you're a fan of HBCU football, we've got a wonderful permanent exhibit on HBCU football dating all the way back to the very first HBCU football classic in 1919 between Howard and Lincoln. So you can learn a little bit about every kind of level of college football here.
Well, Donna, Donna, I keep calling you out, but I can't let this one get away. Dennis, you're a historian, so if Donna was 1,000-point scorer in her college, you would know about it, wouldn't you?
Hey, he should. Hey, look, Tony, we just got those honors this past weekend. But Dennis, you're a historian, and you've had so many multiple stories over your career. What are a few that just really stand out to you since you've been doing this, and that the College Hall of Fame has really presented out there? But I'd be just curious, because you're a wealth of knowledge. What has been a few of the stories or that you really just sticks with you? Because it's a lot, but some just sticks with us more than others.
Well, probably the most recent one, other than the Black 14, I'll admit it's going to be hard for me to top that in my career. But right now, what we're working on is an update to our military football exhibit. And a lot of people, they know about the Army-Navy game every year, and maybe a few other people know about the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy, which is that three-way battle between Army, Navy, and Air Force. But do you know about the major Coast Guard Merchant Marine battle every year? I honestly really didn't until I started working here. And then I decided that people need to know more about the Merchant Marine and the Coast Guard, because they're the 4th and 5th service academies. People think we have 3, we have 5. So I found out all about their football history, and they have a very intense rivalry that happens around Veterans Day every year that I've started to watch thanks to ESPN Plus. I can watch that game live on my computer. And then as I went further, there's other military colleges out there Norwich up in Vermont, Massachusetts Maritime, Maine Maritime, the Citadel, Virginia Military Institute. There's a lot of great collegiate football being played at military schools, and I'm looking forward to letting more people know about those games. So that's the kind of thing that excites me, is this opportunity to get people to go and watch something they haven't watched before and realize that there is a passion for these games on a smaller scale, but the passion is just as equal as the big RV Navy game that we've all watched for years.
Why was this story so important with the Black 14? Because I know for Tony and the guys that went through that, we know why it was important to them, that it's been getting out even more so. But as you kind of like put this together for the College Hall of Fame, why was this story to you so important to get out there and to have out there?
Well, as I said earlier, I think it's just because there is this great level of unknown about the civil rights movement, the way it was taught to me as a child, and I'm sure the way it was taught to the two of you. There was the Deep South. There was Martin Luther King. There was also Malcolm X, or there was Medgar Evers. But this battle for civil rights wasn't just located in a few states down south. It was located in all 50 states of the United States. And so therefore, when I was able to find a great example of that struggle in a state that not many people are familiar with, it was just a natural. There's also the tie-in that Wyoming football was once a legitimate national championship contender. And so that was something a lot of fans didn't realize. And once again, that was a blind spot for me. I knew that as somebody who grew up in Florida, of course I knew Jim Kick went to Wyoming. But what I didn't realize was that Wyoming played LSU in a Sugar Bowl for the chance to finish a year undefeated. So I think that part also led into it. So when you combine this fascinating football history with this important slice of America's civil rights movement, it was just a natural thing to want to tell. And then also meeting Tony and John and Mel over the last 8 or 9 months. I mean, there's always pressure to do it right. You know, I'm my own worst critic. I want everything I do to be excellent because I want it to reflect well on my employer. I want it to reflect well on all those who helped me to get a doctorate in history. But I also didn't want to disappoint Tony, Mel, and John. You know, there was also that level of, man, I better not screw this up because they have a great story and it deserves to be told to a nationwide audience. And if I'm going to do that, I better do it right.
And I tell you,
hey, Tony, I wanted to jump in and ask you, as you go through these years that the Black 14 has been on the platform a lot more and people knowing what really went forward, what do you want the biggest message to come from what happened, what has happened now, and then moving forward? What is the takeaway that you want everybody to know?
I think the takeaway is something that we need right now as a country and as a world, and that's togetherness and adversaries working together after years of being apart. And, you know, for years, I couldn't stand even hearing the name Mormon or Latter-day Saint. I couldn't stand hearing the name University of Wyoming or Lloyd Eaton. But now as I look at this, and I look at how it changed our lives, I look at how this changed our lives. And, you know, Dennis, you and Donna, you guys are a lot younger than me, but as you start looking at things and you look back over your life, you know, as I always say, and you both know my saying, we're in the fourth quarter, but I'm playing for overtime. And when I look back at these kind of things, I realize how I've been blessed. That's what I get out of all of this. I look at how we can work together now with an organization that called us out of our name on the field, with an organization that we wanted to start fights with an organization that put us out of school. But now here we are feeding individuals in a time of peril when it's needed, when food security is one of the top things, and we're able to get over 1 million pounds of food. And we can only do that with the help of the Latter-day Saint. So when I look back at this, I want people to look at it. And I wish I could get a bunch of the Democrats and Republicans to look at it, that you can work together and you can be successful. But the biggest point to come out of that, that's the only way you're going to be successful. And that's what I pull out of this. So my duty now is not to just leave a big legacy about the Black 14, but to leave a legacy that all people can work together, all organizations, and no matter what your differences are, try to work them out, and it work out better than being angry and carrying that around. As they always say, if you carry a lot of anger around in you, it'll eventually destroy the container that it's in. So you got to get that out. And so I got about a year or two more, and I won't be mad anymore. So I'm doing the best I can do.
He's trying, but you know what? Tony has all these little nuggets that he dropped, and I like that. We're in the fourth quarter. We're not in the fourth quarter. What did you say? But we're in overtime?
We're in the fourth quarter, but I'm playing for overtime. And I don't mean sudden death. Wait a minute. You got to straighten that up too, Donna. I don't mean sudden death. I want the cold quarter.
We're in the fourth quarter, but we're working for overtime. So I like that. But Tony, Dennis, thank you for coming to educate a little bit. And as you said, you want people, the exhibit is going to be down there in the College Hall of Fame a little longer. So I would say if you're in the Atlanta area, get out there and see that before you miss a great moment of history. And Tony, I'm going to let you have the last word because we've got to shoot on out of here. And as you always say,
we never say goodbye, but I want to say this to Dennis. Dennis, whether you have the exhibition in there, if you need me to come down anytime, you have a group that you want me to come down and talk about it, I'm more than willing. You know I'm there. And thank you for being on the show, Dennis. You guys are my friends now and everything. And don't believe nothing the next time you're on the show that Donna says because she has
Dennis,
a memory lapse. But you know what? One thing about us on this show, we never say goodbye. We say in the minute.
In the minute.